So one of the biggest things that I think is key to moving on is acceptance, is looking at that relationship in its totality, looking at the person in their totality, not just looking at the good parts, looking at all of it and going, this is who this person is. I can't go with what I would like them to be. I can't go with the words that they've shared with me about what could be and how things could be and all of that fantasy la la land. I have to look at the reality.
Hi, everybody. I am Sandy Weiner. Welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And to support you on your journey to lasting love, I wrote 2 books. The first one is Becoming a Woman of Value, How to Thrive in Life and Love. And this book is for women who want to succeed in all areas of life, of love, to really build their core confidence. And the second book was just released on Valentine's Day, and it's called Choice Points in Dating. And I wrote this book to empower you to make healthier decisions at every stage of dating and relationships. And you can find them both on Amazon for Kindle or paperback. This week's tip on becoming a woman of value is step number 21. Your past doesn't limit you. How often do we feel that we grew up a certain way and that's why we are the way we are, or we had terrible relationships and so that is going to just keep repeating itself? And I am here to say that our past doesn't have to limit us. We get to learn and grow and heal. And that's what I would love for you. My challenge to you is to look at your past as something that happened and it's something to learn from. And ask yourself, what is one thing I can learn from my past that I can do differently this time around? And before I bring my guest on, I just want to invite you to join Your Last First Date. It is my wonderful Facebook group. We have 7 incredible monitors who help keep this group safe and sane, which is very much unlike most of the groups out there for single women. So if you are single and you're over 40, come and join us at Your Last First Date. My guest today is Tal Yardeni. She is known as the Breakup Recovery Coach. She is the creator of the Breakup To Badass Formula, and it helps women let go of their exes, learn to love themselves more, and get ready for their best relationship. Having gone through and healed from her own difficult breakup, she is passionate about helping women recover from heartache. Welcome to the podcast, Tal.
Thanks for having me.
You say that you healed from your own heartbreak and that's what got you here. So tell us how that happened.
I lived in New York for about 13 years and I had a series of relationships. I did all of the dating and I found that I was getting into a pattern of relationships with emotionally unavailable men. And the last one, the last breakup where this happened was really the most painful to me because it was actually more of a situationship. So it had all of the fixings of a relationship, but without really any commitment. So the person could come and go as they please. And it felt very one-sided. So it was very painful and it took a lot out of me. And when I really decided to really let go of this, I had to do some deep inventory and look at, why was I accepting this? Why was I attracting this? And what was going on with me? Because I knew that I can't control anyone else. So I really had to look at my behavior. What was going on where I was feeling like my self-worth was at an all-time low. And so I really made it my mission to work on myself and heal the parts of me that I had accepted less than I deserve. So I was a singer and actress in New York prior to being a coach. And so during the pandemic, my industry completely shut down. And so I was, as I was doing all the healing and on my healing journey, I was really thinking about, what would I want to do? Who would I want to work with? And a couple of my really close friends kept saying, excuse me, they kept saying, you'd be a really great life coach. Have you ever thought about that? And I hadn't thought about that, to be honest. But then I did some research and it felt like the next right move. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go get certified as a life coach and a relationship coach and just see if this is something that feels right to me. And 1 week into getting my certification, I was like, I'm in the right space. Like, this feels so right. So as I'm going through school and, figuring all of that out and, training and all of that, I really was trying to hone in on who is it that I want to work with. And once I had figured out for myself how to heal from these breakups, I was like, I know what I want to do. I want to work with women who are going through a breakup or divorce because I know how painful the process is. I know how isolating this is. And we actually don't really give breakups the really like the brevity that it deserves, because it's really a grieving process and it is very much like a death. And so, there's all this advice out there like just get over it, go on and date the next person. And there's actually much deeper work that needs to take place instead. So for me, I wanted to give women a safe space where they could come as they are, where they don't have to be ashamed of where they are, and really take those next steps to build themselves up and let go of their ex.
I can totally relate to your story because I think that often, first of all, the healing happens when we're taking the courses in coaching certification. I remember because I was going through divorce while I was in certification, and all these things that came up in the coursework, like who are you? What are your values?
Mm-hmm.
What do you stand for? These are
Mm-hmm.
really core things that most of us don't ask ourselves.
It's
And so
true.
this is just the fundamental work of regular life coaching. And then trying to find who you work with, I think it makes 100% good sense that you would work with
Mm-hmm.
someone who you can relate to, who you've gone through already, all of this stuff.
Right.
Let's talk about the healing process and what were your first steps in healing and how you take clients. But let's talk about you first.
What I had noticed in my particular situation when I was going back and forth, is that I wasn't accepting who this person was. I wasn't accepting the behavior and I wasn't accepting what they were showing me. So I was always sort of living in a fantasy version of what this relationship could be, waiting for this person to come around. And so I would buy into words that didn't add up to the behavior. So one of the biggest things that I think is key to moving on is acceptance, is looking at that relationship in its totality, looking at the person in their totality, not just looking at the good parts, looking at all of it and going, this is who this person is. I can't go with what I would like them to be. I can't go with the words that they've shared with me about what could be and how things could be and all of that fantasy la la land. I have to look at the reality. So that was really key.
Yeah. So starting with the reality, this is who they are and not the fantasy of what you wish they would be, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot of wishful thinking. There's a lot of filling in the blanks. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, the words they say don't match the action.
Right.
Starting there, like really do a debrief of the relationship. This is even before you walk away.
There is an element of this before you walk away, because when you choose to walk away, it's because you're looking at the situation as it is and you're going, this isn't working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't wait for this fantasy world that I hope that will one day reach. I have to look at what's going on.
Right.
But what happens is that what I've noticed is with some of the women that I've worked with, they will come to this definitive decision. They make the decision and then they question the decision. They question, did I make the right choice?
Mm-hmm.
Was this the right move? What if they would have changed? What if they could have changed? Maybe I'm being unreasonable. And that's again where we have to bring in that acceptance piece, because when they came to that decision, they were sure. But then our mind likes to play tricks and go, well, maybe not. What if I'll never have a relationship again? What if that's the best that it's going to get for me?
Mm-hmm. I've definitely heard people say, I know I need to break up, but and
yes.
I have one client. He was dating somebody, and it never went anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
as things went on, it was clear that she wasn't interested in a relationship, that she wasn't interested in getting physical with him. She was trying to mold him into someone who she was more attracted to, and so she was constantly criticizing him, and he was kind of oblivious to it. He had been happily married to his wife. She passed away, and this was his new foray into dating. And so it was just like, okay, so you've met your first lesson. And, but I really had to keep asking him questions like, how does this feel to you in your body? How is this working for you? Do you feel like a man in her presence? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel, because she was emasculating him all the time. And it took a lot of coaching sessions for him to come to that. And he had to come to it himself.
Right.
And he had to walk away, and he didn't realize what was possible. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there is something better out there. Self-worth suffers, and then we think this is as good as it gets. And so we
Right.
start to doubt ourselves. So how do people then begin to trust themselves?
That's a great question. It really is building up your self-worth, which is really like a muscle, because women aren't taught this. We're actually taught the exact opposite. We're taught to be selfless. And very rarely do we grow up in a home where we see our mothers really putting themselves first and setting the example. And it's not really modeled to us in society. It's not modeled to us in movies. It's not modeled to us in music. So we have this kind of backwards notion of what it is, like what it is to embody self-worth. A lot of women also, I've had so many conversations where they think like, oh, it's so selfish if I put myself first. And I'm like, no, you're actually like better equipped to help others when you also take care of yourself. It really is like a muscle. So we have to look at these places, boundaries are a really big one. How many times have we self-abandoned ourselves in order to make a situation okay? In order to please another person? We say yes to people when we really want to be saying no. We say yes to situations when we really want to be saying no. We're uncomfortable, but no one's really taught this to us. So there are a lot of different steps in terms of really building your self-worth, but it's really getting comfortable with saying no. It's really, in a nutshell, what I say is self-worth is really when you're no longer willing to abandon yourself anymore.
Mm-hmm. But how do people know what they stand for? Because, you're saying don't abandon yourself. And a lot of people are like, I didn't even see that. I have no idea what that means.
So we look at, I'll have you look at like your last 3 relationships, and it's not because I want us to stay there forever, but it's really important to look at the past because that'll inform you as to how you want to move forward. And so I'll have you look at your last 3 relationships and I'll say, what were the things that kept coming up that you feel like you weren't getting that were really important? Like key things that we're missing. They identify those things. And I'll ask you, why is that important? Why is it important that you didn't get this, but you really want it? Why is that important to you? And that's usually like a core value. It's usually one of your values. And so now we want to be walking through life, like, as you said, like we're not usually doing this kind of work on like, what are our values? But now that's kind of how you want to walk through life with your values at the forefront, because it's going to make decision-making, who you engage with, being discerning about situations, it's going to make it so much easier for you because you're so clear about your vision.
That's so important. Looking at the relationships that didn't work out, you can usually identify what needs of yours were not met. Mm-hmm. And then you start to realize, oh, if I name it, I can then claim it in the next relationship.
Absolutely.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this offer. All right, so people are now identifying what held them back. They're starting to practice self-love, set boundaries. Because they've identified these values, they can set boundaries around them. Mm-hmm. And then what's another step they can take?
I really have you tap into your intuition. I really believe a woman's intuition is her superpower. And half the time we're not listening to it. It's like we get this hit that something's not right, but we kind of feel like we need to see it through. We need to see it unfold. And then we have evidence that it's not for us. But sometimes your body is giving you clues. And so I'm really teaching you how to connect to your body so that you are really recognizing easily when something doesn't feel right. Sometimes you don't need a reason. We don't need to wait for the building to catch fire. Like sometimes like we just know there's something here that's not right. And either I can get curious about it or I can ignore it. And half the time we're ignoring it. So it's about really leaning into the curiosity about what is this that's coming up for me right now?
So intuition is really important. And I think a lot of people get really confused between intuition and a fear-based gut feeling
Mm-hmm.
that is from the past. So how would
Mm-hmm.
you help people define the difference between the two?
Yeah. So from a spiritual perspective, and Marianne Williamson, I used to go to her lectures in New York weekly, and she really has defined this perfectly. She's like, your intuition is like the small, still voice for God. It's like an all-knowing feeling. And when we're in our anxiety, in our fear, there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot going on. Intuition, it's like it's a knowing, it's grounded in your body that something is just not right. And so that's, for me, is very easy for me personally in my life to distinguish between fear and knowing that something's up.
That's a good way to tell the difference. There's that mind chatter. When you really are tuned in, you feel it. You feel this sense of aliveness. There's like this
Yes.
clarity,
Mm-hmm.
and you just know,
Yep.
and it's the other problem I've seen is that people start to ask too many people for advice.
Yeah.
But you've seen that too.
Yes. I used to be one of
So
those people.
yeah, it's like, let me just source the knowledge of all my friends who are really screwing up their relationships, or maybe some of my family members who are equally
Mm-hmm.
screwed up. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going to tell you something different. I was just talking to somebody who their mother just ended a relationship with a very emotionally abusive man. And so they were wondering if I would talk to the mom. And I said, I'd be happy to talk to her. Would she be open to talking to a coach? And he said, well, all I know is she's asking all the wrong people, and people are telling her she should go back to him. If she hasn't told the truth about the emotional abuse and everybody saw it as fantastic relationship, you guys look
Right.
so happy together,
Mm-hmm.
then that's going to be the way that people are going to advise you. And
That's right.
even I will tell you that I've had clients go to a therapist after asking me for advice on something, and the therapist gives them completely contradictory advice. And I say, you've got to pick somebody who you trust and stop asking a million people. So whether it's a therapist or a friend or a family member, really just tune into the person who is your guide and then become your own guide, because that's your intuition.
Right.
And then what? Then what do you do once you've dissected the relationships? You're starting to trust your intuition. You're getting clarity around what you need. Then what?
Then you create your future. Then you look at where you want to go. Right now, we've done some of that really deep work. You're feeling good about yourself. You're feeling more confident in who you are. You're owning who you are. Now, what do you want next? Because what happens is that women will get to this amazing place where they like, I know who I am. I've got myself. And it's like such a great feeling because it's very foreign. And they then the fear comes in and goes, well, I don't ever want to get into that kind of situation again. So I'm not going to date. I'm not going to get back out there. And it's not that like your life can't be fantastic without a relationship. It absolutely can. But if your deep desire is to be in a partnership with someone else, but you're not allowing for that because now you're in this space of like, I don't ever want to experience that hurt again. That's where we have to go. But you are not the same person that you were before you did this work. You are now an evolved human. And so you have to trust that if something comes up, if there's a red flag, you're not going to miss it this time. That if there's a conversation to be had, you now have the tools as to how to speak up.
Such important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we have somebody who has broken up and they get right back out there without doing any inner work. What would you have to say to that person?
Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how many conversations I have with women where they'll want to do my program and they'll go, well, can I just start dating right away? And I'm like, well, I don't advise it. No, you shouldn't start dating right away. Because when you date right away, it's a form of escapism because you are too uncomfortable to sit with the discomfort. Like it is too much for you. And what we want to do is we want to teach you how to self regulate. That if sadness comes up, that if fear comes up, whatever the feeling, the emotion is, you want to learn how to be able to self-soothe, because otherwise you're always going to be seeking externally. And that's why you see these women that run from one relationship to another, to another, to another. It's because it's too much. That pain, that sadness, what they would have to face feels overwhelming and unbearable. So you're just going to keep repeating the same cycle. And the universe is going to keep bringing around the lesson until we learn it. So why not take the time now and see, okay, I see that there's a pattern. I see how this has gone. I'm going to halt. I'm going to stop for a little bit. I'm going to go inward. I'm going to do that work. So yeah, I really don't recommend dating right away.
A lot of people will say, okay, I'm going to take the time, but then they don't do the work. So that also doesn't really help. And it's interesting. I think more women take their time than men, from my point of view, from what I've witnessed. And I think that people honestly don't always see that they need to do work. A lot of men who are widowed, who I've worked with, have gone right back out there and they say, I'm ready. And they start dating and they have relationships, and all of a sudden they're comparing every woman to their late wife, and they're not ready. In fact, I dated a man like this. He was widowed and he was lovely, and his wife had told him, you need to get back out there and move on. I don't want you to just stay single the rest of your life. I want you to find somebody. So he took her literally to her word and like immediately went out there. And I said, wow, when did your wife die? And he was convinced that he was absolutely ready. In fact, I asked him if he was getting support, if he had grief support, and he was totally supported. And within, I don't know, a couple of weeks, I realized that he's just, there was something off. He wasn't ready. And we're still friends because he's so lovely.
Yeah.
But he dated someone else and jumped right into that as soon as I ended things with him. And he then realized, like, I need to stop. He came to it after being out in the dating world, but a lot of people don't realize that they're going to repeat the same thing over and over. So I think taking a break, but not just a break, you also really need to do some introspective work and really get some support, not try to do this alone. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's, what are you doing during that time? Are you being proactive in your healing? Because that saying time heals everything actually annoys the crap out of me, because it's part of it. It's not all of it. There's a reason why, I've spoken to women, one recently where she went through a divorce 5 years ago, but the wounding is all still there. And she's like, well, I've waited 5 years to date and now I'm dating again. So I feel like I'm ready. But then the more she unravels, the more she tells me, it's like, no, there's abandonment issues there. And you think just because 5 years has passed, I should be over this by now. But no, it can feel just as fresh if we don't do the work. So I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. And you see it with people's triggers. Like they get triggered by something small and they go, where did that come from? So it's like, well, you never worked on that. And now any little thing comes up and it reminds you of something, and then it comes up again. And you also say that no contact is really necessary to moving on after a breakup. I'm the kind of person who just ends things. I'm like, it was nice knowing you. I'm done. And then I talk to other people who say, I'm so proud of the fact that I'm still in contact with all of my exes. So,
I've heard this.
So yeah, I mean, I think if you wait enough time, like my ex-husband and I get along great right now.
Yeah.
But it took time. It takes time. So tell us what your thinking is behind the no contact.
Yeah. So it's called a breakup for a reason, which means that we need a clean break from the person. We need to feel what it's like to be out in the world without this person anymore. We need to see what life looks like for us without this person. The reason why I really recommend no contact is because the thing that, my clients, when they fight me on this, because a lot of them will, but then they come around, is they think that especially if it was an amicable split or it wasn't a toxic relationship or the other person was lovely. It's not about if they're lovely. It's not about if it was toxic or not toxic. It's because it's confusing to the mind, because you're staying in contact with a person, but you no longer have access to them in the same way. So now you're wondering why they're not consistently talking to you. What are they doing when they're not with you? It's all of those questions that start to percolate, and it keeps you stuck. So again, it's taking that focus off of you, which like right now is the focus. The focus should be on you, not on them anymore. And so you think like, oh, we can be friends. Sure, you can be friends one day. But right now you need to take that time for you. You need that clean split. And even for the women that I work with that, they're co-parenting, there are still boundaries you can put around how your ex has access to you, what the conversations are about, right? Because it doesn't mean that just because we have kids together that we need to be, chit-chatting or texting. No, it can really be very black and white, that our conversations are going to be about the kids.
Yep. I know divorces that are not really divorces, where they don't have the split. And I know somebody who was dating a guy like this, where his ex-wife acted as if he was still her husband.
Right.
And she would invite him to every vacation and every holiday, and not invite the girlfriend who he was living with. And it was terrible. I mean, it led to her breaking up with him, and she went no contact. And he wanted to keep the fuzzy boundaries because that's what he was used to.
Right.
And in fact, she found his online profile later, and it said something like, whoever dates me has to accept my ex-wife is part of my life. And it's like, at least he's putting it out there. But he obviously didn't learn a whole lot from this experience.
Right.
Yeah. So you also say that a spiritual practice is important during a breakup. What kind of spiritual practice and why?
I do think that an element of surrender is really important. This is this is how I live my life. And so for me, surrender is not giving up, it's a giving over. It's that we think that we have all this control in our lives, but we really don't. There is something bigger than us running the show. So I can either try to do it all, or I can surrender it over and be led. And so I really like to work with my angels. So I'm constantly in communication. I in my program, I have a prompt where I say, angels of the highest good, thank you for revealing to me what you would have me know about whatever the situation is, right? And then I just start free writing and I see what comes to me, and you get hits and you get messages. It just provides such peace and clarity in my life and what I've seen it do for my clients as well. Because we're over here always trying to figure it out. Always, always, always in our head. We're trying to figure it out. And it's so much more powerful when you allow an energy that's greater than us, that we're part of, to help guide you.
Sounds a lot like intuition as well,
yes.
right? For anybody who thinks angels are a little too woo-woo.
Yeah.
However you want to think about how you receive your wisdom, I think it's just important to also not try to control everything. And that's also a fear-based response, that we think we have to be in control of every single thing. Right. And yeah, I was just giving a speech recently about how my mindset has shifted over the years of online dating, from going in, looking for a husband, thinking he has to be the one, and then being disappointed all the time, or getting attached so quickly before I even knew a person, just that whole maturation that happens when you do the inner work and you start to realize how you can grow from every single encounter. And now it's so much of just letting go and being surprised and being open to whatever comes my way and whatever I co-create, and not having it to have to look like what we do usually, which is put it in a box, and
that's right,
has to be a certain thing. And I think that feeling into, once you know your values and know who you are, know what you want, know what aligns, you will feel it, and it probably will look nothing like you thought it should look, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love everything you just said. It's very much in line with how I think. When we look back on our lives, There's so many events that have happened that we would have never thought, right? And that's life. It's like it's going to take you down roads that you never expected. But everything that comes into our life is not a coincidence. It is there. But you have a choice. You either use these moments and you allow it to grow you, or you think that all of these things are just coming at you and you can live life that way and it becomes very chaotic. Or you go, this is here for a reason. What is it here to teach me? How am I going to grow from this? Where do I go from here? And I think
Yes,
that's a much more powerful way to live.
I totally agree with you. I think it's such an important shift in a mindset that most people just feel victimized by what
Right.
happens. And when you
That's
can
right.
really be empowered instead, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Tal, what are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date?
To really know that you are deserving of what it is that you want, and to know that you're an incredible being. That means that there's another incredible being out there that's also looking for you.
Nice. Short and sweet. So believe
Yes,
that number one, you're deserving, and number two, that there is someone out there who will match you, who will be as amazing
absolutely.
as you.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. So tell everyone, where they can find you. Give us one link.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram as the easiest place at the Tal Yardeni. Feel free to DM me if you have any specific questions. You're currently going through a breakup, a separation, or divorce. I get back to everyone who contacts me. And then there should be a free guide in the show notes, the 4 steps to heal from a breakup.
Mhm.
And that'll just give you just some really easy, tangible steps to start taking now to start getting you feeling better.
Great. And you can find the show notes on my website at lastfirstdate.com. Thank you so much, Tal, for coming on the show and helping people to start to really heal from breakups, because it's so devastating if you don't have support and you don't know what you're doing, and then you feel blindsided and you feel like a victim. But the way that you teach is really empowering and gives people like real steps that they can take towards becoming a healed whole person, which is really where you want to be when you go out there and date again. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was great.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you love our show, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you leave a 5-star review, we will be your best friend. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.